I do think that this whole motion, this whole campaign really, I think is fundamentally misguided because it is focused on the Equality and Human Rights Commission guidance, but the guidance simply reflects the Supreme Court decision. So I'd like to quote from that judgment, paragraph 264. It says, the words sex, woman and man in sections 11 and 212 mean, and were always intended to mean, biological sex, biological woman and biological man. These and the other provisions to which we have referred cannot properly be interpreted as also extending to include certificated sex, meaning someone with a gender recognition certificate, without rendering them incoherent and unworkable. They conclude, in other words, a trans man is a woman and a trans woman is a man and not entitled to be treated as a woman under the Equality Act. That is what the law says, that's what the Supreme Court decided. So you're not actually fighting the guidance. Obviously you're fighting reality, I think, but you're fighting the law, and there is a song about who wins that. Because the fact is, men do not have a right to enter women's toilets or women's changing rooms or women's sports, or to be housed in women's refuges, or to enter, to be housed in women's prisons, or to enter women's refuges. Men are not women and do not have a right to be treated as women. That is what the law says. If I can be frank, people need to stop listening to Stonewall extremists. They should read the court judgment, understand the law, engage with thoughtful criticism, and stop ignoring real problems, real downsides, real trade-offs inherent in the campaign that you are, or what you are asking for. Arguing about the guidance is just a displacement activity to avoid doing those things. I will not be supporting this motion.
The next motion is in the name of Assembly Member Hamdache, and if you'd like to propose your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the most difficult things about being a kid is feeling like you don't fit in. And I remember feeling acutely as I found out more about myself and started to realise that I was gay.
Can you put your microphone up, because it's actually...
That I felt not part of the crowd, that I felt vulnerable. And as kids sometimes can be really cruel, seeing kids picked on for being camp, to feel like you couldn't go to the toilet or you couldn't go to the changing room because you weren't confident that you would be accepted, that you wouldn't be targeted. And that's why I've always had such solidarity with trans Londoners and my trans friends, because for whatever crumb of difficulty and challenge that I faced, it's 10 times worse for our trans Londoners. And equally, my childhood at school was under the auspices of Section 28. And that was a set of rules and set of guidance that meant that teachers couldn't challenge the kind of homophobic bullying that some of my friends got in those spaces. I worry, with the change in the code of practice, we are sleepwalking into a very similar situation for trans Londoners. We've had an understanding of the Equality Act for so long that has been upended by the Supreme Court challenges. And now we have guidance that is confusing. We have talk of there won't be need for toilet police, but we are expecting some kind of guidance and rules that mean that service providers have to provide single-sex spaces. The certainty that trans Londoners once had has been ripped up. And I really, really worry about what that means for people's safety, security and confidence in their day-to-day life. Now, I look to America, not always a bastion of tolerance, and yet many American states voted against comprehensively the kind of bathroom bills that excluded trans people that our government are now on the verge of accepting. That's deeply, deeply worrying and a dark, dark stain on what I believe Britain to be, which is a tolerant and accepting place. So I would urge us all to look at this code of practice and to take every step that we can to resist it, to push it back, just like many MPs from lots of different parties are when it comes to this early day motion. Thanks for your time.
Assembly Member Russell, do you wish to second?
I'll reserve my right.
Anyone? Assembly Member Best?
Thank you. And I will speak quickly, just because I think that it's important, I do, that to say I won't be voting for this motion, but I think I won't be voting for it for different reasons to some in the chamber, especially within my party. And that's because I think that I don't not think that things are tough right now for trans people. I don't not think that what's happened has not helped with the narratives within society, and I don't not recognise those problems. But I do think the issues that the motion looks to address are not where the issues lies. In fact, I think in the same way that people have catastrophised the Equality Act previously, leading to the Supreme Court judgment, I think people are catastrophising the Code of Practice now. And actually, I think the Code of Practice, while it's has to deal with the legislation as it is, and I actually think it does bring some clarity to tell people not to be the bathroom police, to tell trans people that they can live their lives. And I have to believe the public institutions that I've spoke with that have said nothing will change. And I do believe that those that are saying there is change, will change, I have to say, I frankly think it's politically motivated. And I think this is a time when we should be reassuring our community, not trying to stress them out even more. I think the problem with everything when it comes to debating trans rights is ground that has been taken by the extremes on both sides, and more normal people in the middle just want everyone to be able to live their lives. They want legitimate concerns of women to be understood, and they want legitimate concerns of trans men and women to be understood. And too often that debate isn't had in a way where we're trying to get to the nub of those with legitimate concerns, the most vulnerable people. It's those with an axe to grind, those who are politically or ideologically motivated that are controlling the conversation. And ultimately, over the last few years especially, it has been many trans people that have felt the brunt of that. And so I think I understand the plight, but I don't understand the attacks on the Code of Practice. And I think even more so, just to be clear, sorry, Chair, I just realised there's not a single example here of something you change or what you want to change. I think the early day motion itself is giving false hope to people. They're changing the Supreme Court decision. I don't think this is the right mechanism to look at the very real problems that people are facing. Thank you.
Assembly Member Garratt, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do think that this whole motion, this whole campaign really, I think is fundamentally misguided, because it is focused on the Equality and Human Rights Commission guidance, but the guidance simply reflects the Supreme Court decision. So I'd like to quote from that judgment, paragraph 264. It says, the words sex, woman and man in sections 11 and 212 mean, and were always intended to mean, biological sex, biological woman and biological man. These and the other provisions to which we have referred cannot properly be interpreted as also extending to include certificated sex, meaning someone with a gender recognition certificate, without rendering them incoherent and unworkable. They conclude, in other words, a trans man is a woman and a trans woman is a man and not entitled to be treated as a woman under the Equality Act. That is what the law says. That's what the Supreme Court decided. So you're not actually fighting the guidance. Obviously, you're fighting reality, I think, but you're fighting the law, and there is a song about who wins that. Because the fact is, men do not have a right to enter women's toilets or women's changing rooms or women's sports, or to be housed in women's refuges, or to enter to be housed in women's prisons or to enter women's refuges. Men are not women and do not have a right to be treated as women. That is what the law says. If I can be frank, people need to stop listening to Stonewall extremists. They should read the court judgment, understand the law, engage with thoughtful criticism, and stop ignoring real problems, real downsides, real trade-offs inherent in the campaign that you are, or what you are asking for. Arguing about the guidance is just a displacement activity to avoid doing those things. I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think I'll contribute. It's interesting that we can have a law or guidance or even a law based on a term that nobody can define. Biological sex has never been determined unless you conclude that brains are not part of our biology. If you conclude that brains are separate from our biology, self-awareness is separate from our biology, then yes, fair enough, you can conclude that certain people who are born with certain equipment can be defined as biologically this or biologically that. And of course, you leave out the case of intersex people, people where their sexes are indeterminate at birth, and that is chosen for them by a doctor when that child is not at a maturity to actually make that decision about what gender they are. But no, we'll ignore those because we don't think they exist. Well, I'm afraid trans people exist, and they've existed for the entire human history. And up until recently, it didn't cause anyone any problems. I'm a conservative. I actually, with this guidance, large organisations may be able to employ lawyers and specialists, but not the owner of a cafe, the owner of a small outlet who will risk legal action against them because of this guidance. And it's funny, we both agree, Assembly Member Bess. I don't disagree with anything you said. Different outcome. I don't think you can leave it to the EHRC to determine this when the impact on small businesses is going to be so horrendous and can be so horrendous. So I'll be supporting the motion. Assembly Member Georgiou.
Thank you. I've recently found myself in the middle of some controversy due to some flag decisions. So I thought I'd make my views clear on this issue, and perhaps they're misguided and perhaps they're old-fashioned. But then equally, I've had reason to sign off a document due to the recent decision as the leader of Enfield Council. My fundamental belief is in your DNA, in your chromosomes, effectively what you are born as, right? I don't think that's a particularly controversial view. Having said that, I'll put it on the record as to what I state what a man is and what a woman is. As I said, it's what you're ascribed at birth. It's in your DNA. Having said that, I think Assembly Member Best has put it correctly and put it in the best way possible, which is extremists on either side have hijacked what's a particularly sensitive debate. In my view, you go to the men's loos if you have a penis, and you go to the women's loos if you have a vagina. I'm sorry, to put it as crudely as that, I really don't understand where the issues lie here. And I would say that all of this, in Enfield at least, we have men's toilets, women's toilets, and we have gender-neutral toilets. I really don't understand how we've gotten ourselves to this controversial position, as that people can no longer state on record what they fundamentally believe. We couch it in these political terms where we've got these gotcha questions, and idiot politicians, quite frankly, can't answer the question as to what a man is or what a woman is out of fear of some sort of political retribution. I think it's a really sad state of affairs. And to be fair, although Assembly Member Boff and I, you, Chair, disagree fundamentally on so many of these issues, it all comes down to a matter of respect. And I'm afraid that we've actually managed to do it in a place here today in a respectful way. But sadly, too many colleagues, perhaps in this chamber, perhaps outside of it, can no longer answer the basic questions that the public deserve answers on. So I think as far as I'm concerned, we all come from a place of respect, whichever way we vote on this motion. I'm against it, but that doesn't mean that I fundamentally am in a different place from where other colleagues are that may vote for it.
Any other contributions? Assembly Member it's Assembly Member Russell to reserve the right. Sorry.
This is, I'm really grateful for the way that people have engaged with this, and Andrew in particular, your contribution was really welcome. We're talking about people here. We're talking, as Assembly Member Boff said, trans people exist intersex people exist and have existed for centuries, and we have all got along, and there has never been a problem up until this last few years, when it has become massively hyped up, and life has become increasingly difficult for many trans and gender diverse Londoners who are finding they're just anxious all the time. We've seen the murder of Brianna Jai, a young trans woman, not by people she met online, but by people she knew from school. We are living through very divided times, and this motion was brought in the spirit of trying to make sure that London remains a place where trans Londoners feel loved and wanted in this city, and where every small business feels confident that they can welcome anyone who comes into their cafe or their business to use their toilets. And I think there have been comments made about, the complexity of the whole legal situation. But basically, for many years, trans people have been using the toilet that fits the way they look, and no one has raised an eyebrow or got in the slightest bit worried. So I hope that we will all manage to get this motion across the line, and if we could please have a recorded vote. Thank you.
Assemblymember Hamdache to sum up, please.
After this vote, was it like 30 seconds later?
In the climate that we're in, and with the code of practice that we see before us, I'm afraid I do talk to too many Londoners, too many friends, who have had their life become smaller because of what is happening. Not sure about whether they can go to work with a toilet facility that's suitable for them. Not sure that they can go to the leisure centre in a way that they have for so many times with the changing rooms that are available. We live in this world where we're pretending that, there's always going to be a third option, or there's always going to be an alternative. But like the chair has said, in these small venues, in these small spaces, there isn't always that extra option, and there isn't always that resource to be really clear about what's provided in a space that is deeply contested, right? Too many places have just found it easier to exclude people, whether that's the WI, who are saying that they can no longer take in trans women, when loads of branches would have been really happy to continue to do that. We are making trans Londoners' lives smaller with unclear, incoherent guidance, when the Equality Act was interpreted really clearly for a very long time, and it's very clear from the people who wrote that bill that it was meant to be interpreted in a specific way. I will just say, though, the Equality Act isn't cast in stone forever. It can be changed by legislators, and it is entirely within the gift of the government that we have today to introduce clarity and to protect the rights of trans Londoners in the way that they have been since 2010. And I would urge this government to fix the problems in the Equality Act.
Thank you. We've got a request for a recorded vote, so...
Thank you, Chair. We now move to a recorded vote on motion 3.10 in the name of Assemblymember Hamdache. I will call Assembly members alphabetically and ask them to indicate if they are voting for, against or abstaining, and I will call the Chair last. And please bear with me because I know we've got some apologies for absence. So, Assemblymember Ahmad.
Abstain.
Assemblymember Lord Bailey.
Against.
Assemblymember Baker.
Abstain.
Assemblymember Best.
Abstain.
Assemblymember Bakari.
All.
Assemblymember Clark.
Abstain.
Assemblymember Cooper.
Abstain.
Assemblymember Garratt.
Against.
Assemblymember Georgiou.
Against.
Assemblymember Hall.
Against.
Assemblymember Hamdache.
For.
Assemblymember Hirani. Sorry. Assemblymember Mahfouz.
Abstain.
Assemblymember McCartney. Assemblymember Polanski.
For.
Assemblymember... No. Assemblymember Roberts.
For.
Assemblymember Russell.
For.
Assemblymember Turrell. And Assemblymember Boff, the chair, please.
For.
Thank you, members. Bear with me while I tally. I make that to be 6 votes in favour, 5 votes against and 7 abstentions, which means that motion is carried.